Good morning.
Good morning.
And giving glory and honor to God. How wonderful it is for us to be here at the old Bethel Primitive Baptist Church that has a very, very long history in this community and in this county. Welcome to our second in a series, If These Cemeteries Could Talk. Oh, the stories that they could tell. There is a saying that when an old one dies, it's like a whole library burning to the ground. Another way of saying it is, it's like the library is locked forever. So today we want to resurrect stories of our ancestors long gone, especially our slave ancestors, as we give new meaning to their lives, that they struggled, they toiled without pay, paving the way for us here today. Old Bethel is a very, very important church, being the second Primitive Baptist Church for African Americans in Bulloch County. And we will be telling the history a little later on. But first, we want to ask the pastor, Elder Paul Moore, to pray for us. And we are so happy to have the First Lady, Miss Christine Polk Moore, and Deacon Roosevelt Moore, and all the Moore family. Love. It's love.
It's all right.
The Love family and the Moore family, the Riggs family, have long traditions here at this church. And so what you all are doing is carrying on that tradition. And at this time, we will have our invocation. We can get it whichever way you want to do it. You want to sing first? Okay.
We're going to sing hymn number 353. Come and meet him and song. Firm now stand on Zion's hill and view my starry crown. Hills and stately towers, their lift there is on high. very name shall die, Our Father,
Yes.
it is again, once more, and another time that we have bowed before you.
Yes.
Lord, we didn't bow for no form, or neither no fashion, nor outside show to the world. But we bow this morning, Lord, for you have been so good to us and so merciful. Lord, you woke us up this morning, and we were still clothed in our right minds.
Yes, Lord.
Lord, we just want to tell you thank you this morning.
Thank you.
For the journey you done brought old Bethel Primitive Baptist Church.
Yes.
Lord, you done brought us from a mighty long ways.
Yes,
We
Lord.
had some ups and we had some downs.
Yes.
But by your mercy, you spared us to roll on just a little while longer.
Yes.
We want to ask you, Lord, to have mercy on everyone that's bowed
Yes.
with us this morning. Have mercy on
Yes.
Willow Hill
Yes, Lord.
Historical Society.
Thank you, Lord.
Let them know that you are God this morning, Lord.
Yes.
And there is no other but you. Have mercy on me this morning, Lord.
Yes.
Because I feel the least of all.
Yes.
Have mercy on my family this morning.
Yes.
You bind us together, Lord.
Yes.
And we know if you be in the midst, Lord, we'll be able to stand trouble, trials, and tribulations.
Yes.
Lord, when this group come together, you put in their mind to preserve some history about our Primitive Baptist Church.
Yes.
Lord, we thank them for doing that this morning.
Yes.
Lord, we just ask you to guide and lead them in the way that you will have them to go. And we know if you lead, Lord, everything will be all right. These are all blessed. We ask in your Son named Jesus Christ. Let everybody say,
Amen. I want to thank you, Pastor Moore, for for the song, because the song is about the tradition. You notice there was no music, common meter, and long time ago, a lot of the members could not read. So the minister or the person who could read would say the words, then everyone else would follow in. And so it's really good that you can connect. As I was listening to you, I was thinking about this very church. This is the original church from 1890 with some modifications. And I was thinking about all those souls that sat in those pews are now resting out in this graveyard that we will be paying respect to today. Thank you, First Lady, for joining in. And thank you, Deacon Roosevelt Love, for just coming and be a part and helping us out with the gate being open so that we could do some work in the cemetery. And we're so appreciative of that. We know that God is going to bless this congregation. I want to give you a brief history of the old Bethel Primitive Baptist Church. As we said before, originally during slavery, African Americans were members of the white Primitive Baptist Church. The oldest being Neville's Creek, founded in 1790, 6 years before Bulloch County itself was organized in 1796. Originally, believe that you are called by God. Go out and start a church among your own people. So he was ordained by Elder Matthew Donelson, who was one of the slave owners of the Donelsons. He was ordained by him and M.F. Stubbs, who was later minister of the Statesboro Primitive Baptist Church. So they ordained him in May of 1879. The Banks Creek Primitive Baptist Church was organized. So this was the first and only black Primitive Baptist church. But since travel was by horse and buggy, mule and wagon, the distance to Banks Creek for people living in this area was long, and nearly 14 miles. So in 1882, this church was organized with Elder Aaron Munlin of Banks Creek and the Mount Pleasant Association, Elder Washington Hodges, George Denmark, Mr. Everett, and others came together. Mr. Henry Moore was also early in the organization and organized the Old Bethel Primitive Baptist Church in 1882, initially meeting in a brush arbor, but on December the 10th, 1890, James Russian, who was a white person who was a member of that Miller Grove Primitive Baptist Church just up the hill, sold for $5 1 acre to establish these grounds, which we have had since. I want to mention one other church. That is the New Hope Primitive Baptist Church, and most people don't know that church because it was founded in the early 1890s. But around 1915, the church was dissolved, and the members from the New Hope Primitive Baptist Church near Brooklyn, Georgia, came to this Bethel Primitive Baptist Church. And one name you may be familiar with, Agnes Groover, who married into the Moore family, they was members of that New Hope Primitive Baptist Church. So just a brief history, and for many years, Harriett, the Riggs family, the Moore family, the Love family, the Halls, they were the primary pioneers of this church. So at this time, we're going to go out and walk to the cemetery to pay respects to especially the 18 formerly enslaved individuals who are in this cemetery, and also we will pay homage to the veterans of the wars who have fought and to help preserve the freedom in this country. Now, many of those, particularly the World War I veterans, went to places like France, and they said that we got better treatment in France than we got in the United States of America. And so we do have some reconciliation and other kinds of things that we need to do as a country and a nation because of past injustices, so that we can move forward. And so this also is an opportunity today to talk about that. And at this time, we're going to get some music from Mr. Earl Donelson, who is related to the Donelson family, George Donelson. And then we will go to the cemetery and call the names of the ancestors. No, taps is the last at the end of the service. We're going to do Saints Who Are Marching In or Amazing Grace or something. And as we're going to be headed to the cemetery.
No, I got it.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and start. We'll do the stone a little later on, and then as we get it, yes, you go and get it. All right. Before we start our tour in remembrance of our slave ancestors, we have a stone or a piece of a prison bar from Ghana that we think has meaning as it will connect us to the ancestors from the homeland. And so I'm going to pass this around, and I want everyone to sort of touch it and pass it on to the next person, because in that you are connecting to our ancestors who came across the waters. Many of them chose not to arrive here. They jumped into the water. Before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. And some of them are buried in the deep sea. And as we reflect on the lives, remember that these were folk who the Constitution of the United States didn't even acknowledge as a human being or a citizen. They were property. The Declaration of Independence from 1776 was not even talking about our slave ancestors. They were property. The first 10 presidents of the United States were slave owners. So we must call them out, and we must remember that the lives of these individuals are so important. So as you touch that stone, lest we forget, pass it on to your children, your grandchildren, and generations to come, so that they will not forget. The first grave we are here is Aaron Love. All of the Loves in Bulloch County descended from this man, born in 1833 in Virginia. Now remember that slavery was banned for importation in 1808. So the slave trade between Virginia and further south became big business. And so Aaron Love was a part of that. He was born in 1833, became a landowner. Now during slavery, there was what we call slave marriages. So he didn't have an official marriage till 1874. And in 1874, Aaron Love married Dora Donelson. Now you heard about Dora Donelson when we did our last tour, because her father, Andrew Donelson, was at the Fish Trap Cemetery. He was born in 1812. She was born in 1840. So as I was telling my wife this morning, I ran across 3 generations of Donelson who was in slavery. Andrew Donelson, his daughter Dora, and Dora had 2 children born in slavery. So this gives you a magnitude of what was going on. Now, it's important to know, Aaron Love, mulatto. Told you last week, Andrew Donelson, mulatto. Dora Donelson, mulatto. So that whole family of Loves were fair-skinned people. And you can go and look at them even today, you will see that lineage. And so Dora Donelson, another thing I want to point out, remember that Professor William James' family had the first black funeral home in Bulloch County called the Royal Undertaking Company. And they buried this lady. Okay. Now, in here are a lot of this Love's family had a daughter born during slavery. This is Dora Donelson's daughter, born in 1863. She died in 1930, and she married a man named Alex Hall, who was the son of James Hall, who was the first chairman of the Board of Trustees at Willow Hill, and was a deacon at the Banks Creek Primitive Baptist Church. So as we move in this direction, this would be their children. So you have Ruthie Love marrying Alex Hall. Now, Alex Hall had a brother that's located down this way, but I don't know the exact grave. His name is Benjamin Hall. And he married Georgia and Brandon, so I want you to start calling these names. Let's start with this, and then I'll move back in that way. Say Ruthie Love Hall. Call her name.
Ruthie Love Hall.
We remember you.
We remember you.
Alexander Hall.
Alexander Hall.
Now, the lady on the end is their daughter. She lived to be 100 years old. Alberta. All right, now this is also one of their children's here, Maxie. Now let's call, say, Aaron Love. We remember you.
Aaron Love. We remember you.
Dora Donelson Love.
Dora Donelson Love.
All right, now farther down here is, I don't know the exact grade, but these are Benjamin Hall's family. Now, Ben Hall, for those of you who know Man Hall, James Garfield Hall, who was chairman of the board at Willow Hill, he's buried down there. So this whole line, when you come to these cemeteries, the families are buried together. So I really want to call attention to the, even though they're not enslaved, they were so important to Willow Hill. You have James Garfield Hall, Man Hall, who married Ruthie Love. And Ruthie was a teacher at the Willow Hill School, also taught at the Riggs School. And over in the corner is Hannah Hodges Brannon with her husband, William Brannon. And Hannah Hodges was the sister of Wesley Hodges. And so that is important. And the Hodges family was connected to Elder Washington Hodges, who was a minister here at the church. All right, so the next one we're going to go to, okay, but they're not the slave. I was just making mention of it. The next grade we want to go to is this gentleman. This is Isaac Riggs, born in 1837, died in 1897. A real important figure because he was one of the original members of the old Bethel Primitive Baptist Church. Registered in the 1870s, the late 1860s, as a voter in Bulloch County, Georgia. A large landowner. His family started the Riggs School. His brother's family started the Willow Hill School, Dan Riggs. This is Daniel Riggs' brother. Now, he was married to Harriett Lanier Riggs. And there are a lot of Harriets, so we don't want to get them confused. She was a slave of the old lawyer Lanier. She was mulatto. He was not. But this family, this is the Herbert Riggs, originated out of these families. And there were a lot of folk that were part of this family. We had now Isaac Riggs' mother was also named Harriett Riggs. She had Dan Riggs, Isaac Riggs, Susan Riggs, who that James Hall I remember, he married Susan Riggs. And Elder Washington Hodges, who pastors this church, married the other sister, Eliza Riggs. They were sold on the steps of the Bulloch County Courthouse in Statesboro, Georgia, and we have the documentation to prove that. And so, very, very important family. Now, some of the Riggses married into the loves. Remember we talked about Dora Donelson love and all that. So I want to take you over here to this large stone here. Okay, let's call their names. Isaac Riggs, we call your name.
Isaac Riggs, we call your name.
Harriett Riggs, we call your name.
Harriett Riggs, we call your name.
Now, when you look at all of these graves around in this section, they're going to be connected to this family. Okay? Now, in this section is the Riggs and Love family name. But I want to bring your attention to a man called Ned Love.
There you go.
This is the son of Aaron Love and Dora Donelson. Born in 1857 and died in 1913. Now, remember, 1857 is the same year of the Supreme Court decision, Dred Scott, where Dred Scott was trying to sue for his freedom, and the Supreme Court, under Judge Tunney, did not recognize African Americans as human. They were property. Now, this was, you can look at the type of headstone and know that this was a man of prominence.
Yes, sir.
He had over 500 acres of land.
There you go.
500. That was quite substantial at that time. And Mr. Roosevelt Love is connected to this family.
It's my granddaddy.
This is his granddad. And so he lives in the settlement today where his grandfather had lots of land. Lots of land. Now, Ned Love married Susan Riggs. Susan Riggs is the daughter of Isaac Riggs and Harriett Riggs, the one I just showed you. Now, let me connect Susan through her sister, who was the first teacher at Willow Hill. Can somebody tell me who was the first teacher at Willow Hill? Anybody remember? Georgiana Riggs. You heard her say that before. Thank you. So this is the sister of Georgiana Riggs, who was the first teacher, who married into Miss Penny Ann Parrish's family, Trimble, Kane Parish. All right, so how beautiful that we are making all of these connections. And Reverend McFadder, you were related to Dora Donelson through your great George Donelson. That's his sister. And so are you, Mr. Earl Donelson. So it's kind of nice to see and connect to all of this. Now, when you look at all of these graves in this area, you're going to have Riggs of Love. Now, one of the ancestors was Gloria Love, who have a lot of her people in this area here. Okay, now we're going to move down this way, and I want to tell you a little story about one of Dora's children called John. All of this, Melvin Love, Joe Love, all these are children of Ned Love. Can y'all call the name Susan Riggs?
Susan Riggs.
I'm sorry.
Ned Love.
Ned Love.
Thank you for the way that you have led us.
Thank you for the way you have led us.
Now, this is John Love, who married Penny Little. Now, John Love is the son of Dora and Aaron. And I just wanted to mention him because after his wife died in 36, long time ago, African Americans used to visit different family members. They stay a week and then they get on the train, they go to another place and stay. So my grandmother told us is that Uncle John used to come and visit all the time. And so my grandmother would always cook food early in the morning before they go to the fields. And so all the food would be done so that when they come home, all they have to do is warm it and eat it. So she came home a little early and she said Uncle John had all the pots. He was eating out of all the pots and he didn't know he was being observed. He was just eating, and then she said, "Help yourself, Uncle John." He said he dropped the pots and just like he wasn't doing anything. But she said he was eating directly out of the pot. So Uncle John, I had to tell this story on you. All right, so even though they weren't born through slavery, these are the children of formerly enslaved, born just after slavery, meaning during the era of Reconstruction. Uncle John and Aunt Penny, this is my great-grandmother's sister here, and this is their daughter. I wanted to show you another child of Dora Donelson. That's Alfred Love, who married Retta Denmark. Now, this was a very important family. We're going to be putting some pictures online because we have this whole lineage here. But I just wanted to show, born 1866, was just after slavery. Wanted to show you this grave here. Miss Laura Bell Martin, teacher at the Willow Hills School, a teacher at many of the one-room schools, and was very important in the education system of Bulloch County as a visiting teacher. Now, when you come to this cemetery, there are three really large families. There's the Moore family. She comes through the Moore family. Her mother was a Moore who married a Henley. It's Laura Henley, and there's their grave right there. All right, now this is a grave I want to show you. Born just at the edge of slavery, H.W.B. Smith, a great educator in Bulloch County. Graduated from Georgia State University in 1901. He was born, his parents smart, they came from Tapno County. His brother, George Smith, was the second teacher at the Willow Hills School. Now this is Amanda, his wife. He was much older than her. She is the daughter of Alfred Love, was a long teacher at the Statesboro High and Industrial School, taught with Professor William James, and was a long and important person in the PTA at the Statesboro High and Industrial School. So this is Miss Amanda Smith, lived to be 100 years old. And I had the distinct honor of meeting her on a few occasions. So let's call Professor Smith, we call your name.
Professor Smith, we call your name.
Okay. Now, these children here, these folks here, are the children of Alfred Love and Retta Denmark. All of these in here, okay? And of course, Amanda is one as well. All right. Now, I want to go over to this grave here, these two graves. This is William Littles, born on the edge of slavery. He married Rebecca Moore. So this is that connection back to the Moore family. And we're going to talk a lot more about the Moore family because most of them are kind of buried in that area. He accumulated a lot of wealth, but during the Depression, things happened. And one day, the Caucasians came in and took all of his possessions because they said that he was indebted to him. And soon after that, he died. But I'm sure this is the definition of what we now in medicine call a broken heart. Just, he had all, and when you interview his family members, they tell you about the things that he had. So if you see all of these graves in this area here, they are the children and grandchildren of Rebecca Moore. Now, Rebecca Moore is the daughter of Cornelius Moore. Cornelius Moore was born enslaved in Virginia in 1825. He was enslaved to a man, slave owner was Samuel Moore. Now there was about 14 children, and Pastor here is from that same lineage of Cornelius Moore. Now, so when we look at that central section that we're going to take a look at, those are primarily the Moores. So remember, we saw the Riggs, we saw the Loves, and now the Moores. So this is, and anyone who marries into that family will still be part of the lineage called the Moores. There's a lady down there, Cousin Beulah, one of her grades when I was a young man. I used to drive her around to the church. Beulah, she was born in 1891. And she is the daughter of William Littles and Rebecca Moore. She's one of the oldest children of that. And I used to enjoy listening to the history. And yes, her daughter. Yes, Mary Strickland. Who are you talking about?
I think I want to still living. She's in nursing.
Oh, okay. She's still. Oh, talking about John. Yes, Audrey John.
All right.
Yeah, born in 1928. Yeah, she's in. Her husband is out here, but she's. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go by and see her. How's she doing?
Pretty good. We
Good.
gotta see her Sunday.
Good. We got to see her. So all of these are related. Now later on, we're gonna be talking about the soldiers buried here. But this Reuben Cooper was married to one of her daughters called Parnell, who was the baby of the family. Okay, now let's go over here, and then I'll circle back in here. There was some Carraways out here, and the Carraways came to Bulloch County as part of the turpentine industry. Charles W. Carraway, 1858. Married Arenda, and they came and had children, many, and they married into the Love family. Cleveland, that's your mom and dad, huh?
Right.
Okay, so he's sitting on his mom and dad's stone there.
Right.
Minnie Carraway, the daughter of Charles W., came from North Carolina as part of the turpentine industry, and Arenda. And as a young man, he remembers your two grandmothers living together.
Brenda and Susan.
Okay, and this is Arenda, and then Susie was the grade we saw over there in married Ned. And so you remember them, and you was a little lad.
Little lad, right.
How wonderful it is to remember that story. And I appreciate these stories when y'all share them with me. Because and then this is your brother, huh?
Right, that's Bob. That's my oldest brother.
Your brother who was in the military, and where's your other brother over there, right?
That's Lehman.
That's Lehman. Okay. And your father was in World War I.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So that's all important to see the connection to the military history. So look at that. You have two generations right here who served in World War I and two sons that was in World War II.
Right.
Okay. How wonderful. Now, when we move in, now those graves over there belong to the Moores.
Right.
That's Harry Moore, and he had a brother named George Moore. They born in the 1890s, one 1891. They were World War I veterans. Okay? Now let's walk into this area because these are the Moores. There's a lot of Moores here. This is Ziegler married into the Riggs family. You can look much more. And I just want to point out these are the slave ancestors here. Okay. Now this is Jerry Moore, born a slave, and this his wife, born a slave in 1855, let's see, this was Fanny. She was a Lundy. Fanny Lundy married Jerry Moore, 1855. I think he was born about 1857. Early members of this church, and Jerry's father was Cornelius, the one I told you was born in 1825. So let's call their names. Jerry Moore.
Jerry Moore.
Fanny Lundy Moore.
Fanny Lundy Moore.
Okay, so that is most of the slave individuals that I've covered. These all are part of the Moore family. These are all children of Cornelius Moore and Mary Moore. Now, Cornelius had 2 wives now. I told you about that last week at Fish Trap, where Andrew Donelson had 2 wives. So the wife that had the most children was Mary. There was also one called Sabry. And this Jerry Moore, Sabry was his mother. But his mother left and went to Montgomery County, and she left Jerry to be raised by Mary with the other children. So they all were raised in the house together as children of Cornelius Moore. Okay. All righty, so that would conclude most of the slave ancestors. What I want to do now is call out the names of the soldiers or the veterans of the wars, and after the end of that, we're going to have our musicians to do taps for us, okay? So I'm going to read the names. We aren't going to go to each of the individual graves, but I want to read the names. Reuben Cooper, World War II. James Floyd, born in 1888, World War II. Watson Hodges, born 1894, World War II. Leroy Gloucester Holland, right over there, World War I. Paul Littles, born 1923, World War II. Cleo Love, born 1917, World War II. Lafayette Love, born 1921, World War II. Detroit Moore, 1919, World War II. George W. Moore, born 1891, World War I. Harry Moore Sr., born 1895, World War I. Lehman Moore, 1923, World War II. Herbert Moore, 1905, World War II. Albert Rayan, born in 1950 from the Vietnam War. Theodore A. White Jr., born 1941, was in the Marines, Vietnam War. Jesse Ziegler, World War II, born in 1921. So, can we play homage to that? And we want to, yes.
The Paul Littles.
Yes.
That you call, that's my wife's family.
Okay. All righty. Is that on the wife or the?
That's on the dad's side.
Okay.
That, if I'm not mistaken, that was her uncle, I believe, or great uncle.
Okay.
Little
Paul Little?
Paul Jr.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Paul Jr. My wife.
Yeah, they lived in Whitesville.
Whitesville, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. They had a brother named Tom Littles.
Yeah.
Yes, Thomas.
Yes.
In Jersey.
Mix out round.
Okay, so let's, before we conclude, we're going to get taps, but your grandfather is over here, and that's Wayne Moore. And then your daddy is over here as well, Elwood Moore, is that right? All right, I want to make sure. So this is your grandfather and your grandmother, Pastor Mary Butts. Your dad was born in 1868, your grandfather, just after the Civil War. And this is your father here, Elwood Moore, born in 1912, died in 1960. And this is your brother, who's Herbert Moore? Yes. Who is he to you? That's your uncle there. Okay, good. All right, remember I talked about Agnes Groover, who married Solomon Moore. This is the one that came from that New Hope Primitive Baptist Church that went into this church. Now, here is since we're talking about that before we do taps, here's a grave also by the Royal Undertaking Company. Now, I want everybody to come around this before we do the taps, and I don't want anybody to move this until I figure out what it is. But I don't know exactly what this is. I don't know if it's a pot or it's a mass or what it is, but it's something that I discovered when I was looking at it. It almost looks like an African mass. Or I don't know if it's the angle of a pot or whatever it is, but I thought that was really interesting. The person here was buried in about 1930 by the Royal Undertaking Company, which was Professor William James's son, Worthing, who was a mortician there.
We had a lot of headstones out here. One time somebody come out and broke them up.
Really? Oh my goodness. Yes. And then we have from 1937, that's from the Statesboro funeral home that was gross funeral home there. So there's a lot of history in cemeteries. Don't throw away things out of cemeteries if you don't understand what it is. Leave it there because archaeologists can answer a lot of information. Okay? All righty, so at this time, in honor of our soldiers buried here, we will entertain taps.
I just want to get cold, I won't say nothing.
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you. One last comment. In the almost 137 history of the old Bethel Primitive Baptist Church, there have only been 5 ministers, and Pastor Moore is the 5th. My great-great-grandfather, Elder Washington Hodges, was the first one from 1882 to 1921. And then we had Elder Holder, L.D. Holder, who was minister until 1929. And then R.A. Andrews came in, and he served for a number of years until 1961. And then Elder Willie Veal came in, and he served a long time. He just died, 2 years ago? 2 years ago, and that's when Pastor became minister. So he had a very long tenure from 19.
No, he died last year.
He died last year. So okay, so that is a long tenure here at this church. So thank y'all very much. I will get benediction from Pastor McFadder. Is he here? Okay, there he is. He will give us the benediction.
Father God, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for families and loved ones who has passed on before us. Help us to realize that there's a lot of knowledge of things that we can benefit from by knowing how we are connected. Father, we thank you for Dr. Jackson and his wife and the Willow Hill Renaissance. Thank you for the work and the labor and the toil that they have done. We ask that you would keep them strong, Lord, in this community. And as we view these cemeteries here in Bulloch County, we thank you for the opportunity, thank you for the knowledge. We ask that you would continue to bless our endeavors. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now may the peace of God that passes all understanding rest, rule, and abide with his people now, henceforth, and forevermore. May everybody say amen.
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 Amen. Okay, we're going to continue these cemetery tours. There are 34 known African American cemeteries in Bulloch County. The next one is going to be the Scarborough Missionary Baptist Church Cemetery at Portal, Georgia. And once you start getting in these cemeteries, you'll see that there's a lot of connectivity. We need volunteers to help us clean around a lot of these graves. We didn't get a chance to finish everything we wanted to do here, so we're going to try to do some additional work here. So anyone interested in helping or participating in preserving the history of our people, please do. And I keep repeating this because it rings in my ear, and I've told you this once before, what my grandmother used to say to me. She said, "Oh Lord, they go to funerals and they scream and holler and they fall out. They said, oh Lord, I ain't gonna see you no more." She said, they mean that too, but they don't even come and clean your grave. Oh Lord, I won't see you no more. So I want to thank all of you for coming and being a part of this celebration as we commemorate the 400th anniversary of African Americans first coming to this shore in 1619 in Virginia. We will continue this celebration for the rest of the year as we visit cemeteries and do other activities at the Willow Heritage and Renaissance Center. Certainly want to thank my wife for all the great work she does, keeping these programs, keeping me on track. Thanking my doctor, my daughter, Dr. Kingay Jackson, who works as a physician, but at the same time is on our board and show a great interest. Want to thank you too, my Deidre friend, for coming out here and helping me pick up trash, and all of those who participate. We thank you for the music, and we thank you, Pastor, for the bus, and we thank all of those who are participating in helping our fundraising ideas. Remember, that is so important to keeping the operation going as we are preparing, and we want to thank our cemetery committee. Let me get all those names so I won't forget any of them. And the cemetery committee is Mr. Earl Donelson, Mr. Reagan Donelson, Ms. Lakia Hilliard. Thank you so much for the pictures you're doing. Ms. Bertha Pryor, Mr. Khalil Maka, Ms. Maria Olivas, Mr. Anthony Simmons, Ms. Joyce Simmons, and Ms. Valerie McCray. Thank y'all so much, and thank all of you for coming. And hopefully, if you will go online, we're going to be putting additional information on the cemetery tours. We actually have photographs of a lot of the formerly enslaved individuals. We thought we was going to show them here, but thought maybe it'd be better to put them online. Okay, thank y'all so much, and may God bless all of you.
Okay.